You guys are our first line of defense before that woman makes a decision that she cannot go back on. And I just want to thank you guys and honor you. You guys are doing a great job illuminating truth, hope, and life, not only on your campus, but also in your communities. And so I would like to welcome some really awesome women who are going to give you some more tools so you can be even more effective. Today on our panel, we have Sally Wynn. She's the Vice President of Feminists for Life. We also have Peggy Hartshorn. Peggy is the President of Heartbeat International. And then Beth Rahal, who is our Pregnant on Campus Coordinator for Students for Life. So welcome to our panel. So today, I just thought it'd be fun to kind of hang out with you guys. It's sort of like a chick chat here, so you guys just bear with us.
There's nobody there.
No one's rolling their eyes, right? Okay, good. All right, well, so we want to bring real, tangible things onto our campuses, right? Right? Yes, we do. And so first off, Sally, I just want to hear a little bit about what you do with Feminists for Life and maybe some of your own story of how resources, having them on campus or not having them on campus, has impacted your own life.
Well, thanks, Tina. You know, I have been with Feminists for Life now for longer than you guys have been alive, probably, a lot of you. But I got pregnant my junior year in college, and I come from a very liberal family, and I was very pro-choice at the time. I even had a bumper sticker on the car. And when I found myself pregnant, I realized I didn't have any place to live on campus, and I went to a Big Ten college. I didn't have any place to live on campus if I had the child. There was no undergraduate parental housing. I had no health coverage in my health insurance for students. And the daycare that was there, when I called, they're like, oh, yes, dear, we have daycare. But first it goes to the tenured professors, and then it goes to the associate professors, and it goes on down the line and graduate students. And dangling at the bottom of the food chain, undergraduates could put their babies there. But currently, we're full, and there's a waiting list if you'd like to put your name on it. Well, when you're pregnant, there's not much of a waiting list. It's kind of binary, you know? You don't get to say, hold on just a minute. So there I was, a junior in college with no place to live, no place to leave a baby, no money to pay for the delivery, and very pro-choice. And those decisions that I made right then were very profound. You see, it wasn't one of those things where I thought about my religious beliefs or I thought about my political beliefs. I was young, I was in college, and I was scared to death. I was thinking about the basics in life, what resources are available. Well, fortunately, I had a very supportive family, and I was able to go and move to another campus and have my daughter, Emily. And she's now 21. Thank you. Yeah, she really is that awesome. She's 21, and she's been involved with the Students for Life group on her campus, so, as she should be. Anyway, but, you know, I had family that helped fill everything in. But what we found at Feminists for Life is so many people don't have that option. I mean, you look at the abortion statistics on college campuses, and we're finding women don't have the resources they need. So, a long time ago, we started doing the Pregnancy Resource Survey, which has now developed into the great guide that Students for Life and Feminists for Life works together on, that you can find on their website, and we have a link from ours somewhere, but theirs is probably easier to find. And we started evaluating, having students evaluate their campuses to find out what there is available and what there isn't available for students. And then what we would do is, generally Feminists for Life, we come in on campus and we bring all the people who can make decisions, all the administrators, we bring them together and say, okay, do you have housing? Do you have daycare? Do you have maternity coverage? Do you have diaper decks? I mean, everything. And we hold them accountable for what they do and don't have. Your student group actually is the one that does this. That's why Students for Life does such a good job of getting you here and mobilizing you so that we can work together. And really, I think some of the work we did helped to inspire the Pregnant on Campus initiative. So we've been working together for a long, long time. Not that long, we're very young. But we've been working together so that we can give you the tools you need to go onto your campus, talk to your administrators, and actually change the campus. That's the kind of legacy that you can leave behind to the next person who comes, because you're going to graduate eventually. No, really, you will. Promise. And so when you graduate, you want to leave a legacy that continues on. And if you start making the change on campus, then it keeps going, and it keeps rolling, and it keeps getting bigger. And you can really see that things that you actually do on campus make it possible for women to continue their educations if they become pregnant, so they don't have to choose between their children and their education. So that's what we do at Feminists for Life, and we love to help however we can with the student groups, and we have a table out there with a lot of information, and that's what we do. We help give you the tools you need to change your campus with the administration. And we stand on a lot of feminist history, I have to say. For any of you who are like, oh, feminist? The F word? Just so you know, the other one, twice as long. Just so you know, we are the true feminists. That's right. Right here. All the early American feminists were pro-life without known exception. We've got a magazine on the table that talks all about it. Take 1, take 5, whatever. I don't want to take them home. But we are the true pro-life feminists because we believe that society should change to accept women. We should not have to change to be accepted by society. And that's why we need pregnant resources.
That was good. Thank you, Sally. Well, one of the things I really have enjoyed in getting to know Feminists for Life is the study that you guys did. I love what you called it. What did you call your study?
Perception is reality.
And I love that because that's really true, isn't it? If we don't see something, it doesn't matter what's really there. It's what we believe is there that is our truth. And so using the survey for campuses really lifts the veil off what is available on a campus. Because if the perception that nothing is there, then for that pregnant, scared student, there's nothing there. Right. Even if there is. And so I love what you guys do in assessing, because I think that's one of the first things you guys need to do on your campuses is assess.
Absolutely. You don't know what your task list is.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what your job is as the pro-life group on campus. I mean, you can stand up and talk about what's right, but if you want to create change for these pregnant women, you have to know what you're facing. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the assessment really comes into play. You go and you find out, what do we have, what don't we have, why don't people know about this? Mm-hmm. It's like daycare. Do you know how many people I had to call? I know, there was no internet. Shh, shh. Yeah. I mean, there was, but we didn't know how to use it yet. Al Gore was still working on it. But we had to make phone calls, and I called all these places, and nobody knew. Nobody knew. I finally got a hold of somebody in the education department who just happened to know. And so women need to not have to search that far because, you know, they can open up the phone book or they can look online and make one phone call, one appointment. They take MasterCard and Visa and take care of it that way. And we don't want women to face that.
And I think, you know, that's the problem is that a lot of women on campuses are taking out their visa. Yeah. And they're choosing to abort because they feel like that's the only option that they have is it's either their education or it's their child. And they don't feel like they can do both. And so you guys have an epidemic on campus of women who are hurting because they're post-abortive, because they didn't have anybody there. Maybe they didn't know what resources were there, and so they didn't choose life. And so they're grieving, maybe they're angry, maybe you've met some of them on your campus when you're hosting one of our tour displays and you're riling things up. But I have Peggy here with us today, and she's just gonna share a little bit about what we can do to reach post-abortive women on campus because you know that they're there and they're hurting. And sometimes as a pro-life movement, the things we do and the things we say brings up a lot of pain for them. And so it's really important to feel out what can we do for these women on our campus. And so Peggy, what would you say to that? What can we do for these women?
Well, thanks, Tina. First of all, I think I have heard, I don't know how true this is, not being on a college campus anymore. I actually taught college English for 20 years, but that was a while ago. but I understand, I hear that for many pro-life students, and even in your pro-life groups, post-abortion is not a primary issue that you talk about or that you deal with, and perhaps might be even kind of dismissive about it. And if this is true, I just want to try to encourage you to make this a primary issue. if only for this reason, that 50% of all abortions are actually repeat abortions. They're done on women who have already had one or more abortions. How can we stop this massive number of abortions is by helping women get healing. Unless they're healed, if they get pregnant again, and it's highly likely they will, sometimes it's kind of a compensation baby for the one that they lost. And yet, even though that may be the case, they still will proceed and have another abortion because of their woundedness. So if it's only for the reason of saving babies, we need to be interested in this. But also, we've got women who are hurting tremendously. We now know that a lot of symptoms women have, like depression, drug use, multiple sexual partners, all of this can be traced back many times to an abortion. All right, so we would be tremendously helping women with all kinds of issues if we can get to this root issue. So that's really important to know. Another thing that's important is that I understand that many people consider pro-life students and even students for life in your groups to be very judgmental, that we have judgmental attitudes about women who've had abortions. And that sometimes can come across in ways that we don't intend. For instance, a comment that you may make, like, pretty commonly I've heard, how could a woman ever have an abortion? How could she ever have an abortion? Well, guess what? There are probably women listening who have had abortions. And when they hear you say that, you know, they feel like, oh gosh, I could never confess it to her or to him because I know what they think. You know, so they keep that deep, dark, secret shame, and they won't tell anybody. If you have time, I'd love for you to look at a website. It's either stacyzally.org or stacyzally.com. It was put up by the father of a beautiful college girl named Stacy Zally. She was from a pro-life family. She had an abortion because she was so ashamed that she got pregnant, wouldn't tell her parents, hardly told any of her friends. And she went into a depression. Her father tried a psychiatrist. They tried everything to help her. And eventually she committed suicide. And he's put up this website to try to help other people understand, particularly what happened was he never knew until her funeral why she had committed suicide. And one of her acquaintances finally told him, you know what she said to me after she had the abortion? I can't tell my pro-choice friends because the ones I've told just say, get over it. You know, you did the right thing, get over it. And she said, I can't tell my pro-life friends because they wouldn't understand. They don't understand why anyone would ever have an abortion. And so alone and afraid and depressed, she committed suicide. So we need to have an accepting, non-judgmental, loving, caring attitude. One of the things that I have made a vow about as a pro-life speaker is that I never speak about abortion without talking about post-abortion healing, so that anyone who's listening who maybe has had an abortion knows that there's help available. Another thing that I think your clubs and your groups could do is to educate yourselves more about why women do have abortions. And you know, there's a phenomenal study that was published years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, still true, it was published in First Things. We know this from experience in the pregnancy centers. Women who are pro-choice and women who have had abortions will say about their three options, well, I know I have three options: abortion, adoption, and continuing the pregnancy, keeping the baby. Well, the worst of these three options, they're all bad. The worst is adoption, because I would be forced to be a mother, and then I'd be a bad mother because I'd give my baby away. The next worst is continuing the pregnancy and keeping my baby, because that's the end of my life as I know it. I could never recover from that. So the best option is abortion. I know it's killing my baby. They'll say this. Robbie George mentioned, everybody knows now, you know, from ultrasounds and everything else, human life begins at conception. So they say, I know I'd be killing my baby, but it's the least of the three evils. So this is the way women are thinking. And so when they say it's the end of my life as I know it, this is how they're really feeling. The thoughts, the feelings, the wants, the value, they're all overwhelming them with this is the end of my life. You mentioned it, Sally. That's the way you felt. Luckily, you had a very supportive family, and it wasn't the end of your life. But we have to let people know that it's not the end of their life as they know it. Doesn't have to be. Now, how do we do that? And I think if you hear about a person who may be pregnant, if she comes to you, if you know someone who's had an abortion, or she has the courage, or he, because males suffer from this as well. If they should come to you and say, I've had an abortion, I don't know what to do. Or if they come to you in anger because of what you're doing and say, well, you don't understand. Abortion's absolutely necessary. I had to have one, and I'll tell you why. Now, you don't have to be an expert and think, oh my gosh, what's the brilliant thing to say here? What you have to use is what we call the love approach in Heartbeat International, L-O-V-E. It's based on 1 Corinthians 13. But the first step, L, is listen and learn. All you have to do is say, tell me about it. Wow. How are you feeling? You know, tell me more. What's your story? You know, I want to hear it. And you make eye contact with that person, and you will probably be the very first person they've ever encountered on this issue who wants to sit down, listen to them, and talk about it. That's what you have to do. L step, listen. And then we teach what we call the awareness wheel. You ask about their thoughts, feelings, wants, values, and beliefs. If you think you've heard it, you've heard their thoughts over and over again, why they had to have this abortion. Well, now, how are you feeling? What are your feelings? You know, let's explore this. And what do you want now? You know, and how does it affect your values and beliefs? Feelings, thoughts, wants, values, and beliefs. That's the L step, and that will often take the person almost through the healing process just to have someone listening to them. But then the other steps are L-O-V-E. Options, what are their options now? What's a new vision and value that you can share with them? And how can you extend and empower them to make better choices? We have a free download of that on the Heartbeat International website if you're interested. Heartbeatinternational.org, just search Love Approach, and you have a free download. Everybody can learn it, everybody can do it. And we need to deputize you to do it, because think of the thousands and millions of people out there who have had abortions. So I don't want to take too much time. Let's see, did I go over all my points? Since I was an old teacher, I made some points here that I want to go over. The last thing I want to say is, what resources do we have on campus? Can you get on campus? Do you want to do that now?
Well, yeah,
or after the question?
I want to ask that, but I really want to highlight a lot of our groups and a lot of our students are on secular campuses. And so sometimes there's some hesitation because a lot of the post-abortion resources are religious and look very religious, yes, from the front homepage of the website to the
right,
literature they have. And so for maybe groups that don't want to put that out first,
right,
is there other...
And let me say that those are wonderful materials, yeah, but we
yes,
know
they
that
are wonderful
when
materials.
a woman goes through stages of getting to healing, often there are lots of things that have to happen before she even will recognize that she needs spiritual healing. So that's not generally what you want to come at first. Mm-hmm. So luckily there is a whole set of materials. There's a wonderful website, mm-hmm, called Abortion Changes You. Yeah. AbortionChangesYou.com. That's the one I would recommend. A very neutral materials. You can even send people to the website and they can work through some things on the website to help identify feelings and say, yeah, I guess maybe this is coming from my abortion. And maybe there is something I can do and help available. It's a great resource, abortionchangesyou.com. So I would agree with you there. But if you do find someone who really is honest about suffering at this present moment from a previous abortion, the other great resource, there's a 24/7 hotline for people who have had abortions that I just love. It's called the National Helpline for Abortion Recovery, but the National Helpline. So if you look at nationalhelpline.org, you can get their 800 number. Those two resources you ought to have on your cell phones and be ready, because there have to be hundreds, if not thousands, of women on your campus who have had abortion.
Yeah, and then one thing that you were saying that caught me, and that Sally said too, about your life being over. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes because we're so excited about life and a woman choosing life,
we don't give her space to grieve because her life really is over. Would you agree with that?
My life was definitely different.
Well, the life that you, I mean, because
The
I feel
life
like
I
you...
imagined, yeah. I mean, I came from a family where 3 of my grandparents were professors. My dad has 4 master's degrees and his doctorate, and I'm an only child, and I got pregnant when I was a junior. So, as you might imagine, kind of stressed the family out a little bit. But now, you know, I've got 2 daughters who are in college, and I'm a different person, but I'm not a worse person for it.
Absolutely.
And loving them and having them, because I had the support around me, enabled me to really appreciate being a mother and helped me look into a whole different side of life. It was like Christmas all over again. I know that sounds silly, but everything when you have children is different. I'm a much more compassionate person and loving person because of Emily and Hannah. And I couldn't see that at the time. I was so scared that I couldn't see it, but ultimately my life was just different, not worse. It was just different.
But do you agree about like giving someone a moment to grieve? Because there is a real like loss
When
that's
they know that they're pregnant.
yeah.
Absolutely. They need, again, the listening is what you need to do. How are they feeling? You know, process that. What are your thoughts? You know, what do you want? Just be there for them and keep asking questions, but open-ended questions, not pinning them down, but tell me more about it. You know, and feedback. I can see that you're biting your lip. Does that mean that you're really scared? You know, give them some feedback so they know you're really listening. It's you know, someone said, and I love this saying, the best alternative to abortion is another person. So we have to be one-on-one with these people, and it's an honor if someone has shared that with you. It's an honor if someone has shared that they've had an abortion. They know they can come to a person who cares, and then we need to be that caring person for them. Yeah.
Chances are if they go to their health clinic on campus or something, the first words they're going to hear is, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Well, how can they be sorry that you're pregnant if you don't even have time to think about it yet, right? It's
And
like,
then maybe right away say, now you know what your options are.
right. Here's the number for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Beth, taking these things and tying it all together, how do we bring some of these things onto campuses to impact our campus?
Well, first off, I want to thank, obviously, Sally and Peggy for their experience and expertise in both these different subjects, because we need to be listening and learning from women here and from the other speakers here today so that we can take this back to campus. But we know that this conference isn't just about what happens here. It's about bringing this back to your campus. So the title of the panel, if you guys didn't catch it before, is Bringing Truth, Hope, and Light to Your Campus. So what does that actually mean? Because I looked at the title and I'm like, oh, that's really pretty. Yeah, okay. Lovely. What does that actually mean? This is actually a call to action for you and for your student group. We're calling you to action. If you want to bring truth to your campus, you must educate your peers. You must educate them about pregnancy, about abortion, about options, and about life-affirming resources to support them. If you want to bring hope to your campus, you must show your peers that you care. So you need to step out as advocates for these pregnant, parenting, and post-abortive friends and classmates on your campus. You have to show them tangibly, visibly, vocally, that you care about them, about their unique story, about their genuine concerns and needs, that you are there to offer compassionate and non-judgmental support. You're not there to judge them for why they're pregnant or why they made a decision in the past. You're there to help them and support them. And then finally, if you want to bring light to your campus, you have to take action. You cannot bring your campus out of darkness. You cannot free them from the darkness of the culture of death if you just sit back and look around and say, yeah, I'm pro-life, that's great. Good job, pat in the back for saving your child. That's not enough. You guys have to be the ones to take action to bring resources to campus and to show your college community that you care about the young mothers and fathers on your campus. Because I'm sorry, the college campuses aren't doing that. They aren't advertising resources. They aren't expanding their childcare programs or their housing options available on campus. So you guys need to be the ones to do that. Now, again, that's all lovely, and that's lovely little bullet points, but what does that actually look like? So what tangible steps can we take to make that happen on your campus? So what I want to share with particularly our college student groups is the Pregnant on Campus initiative. This is a very special program, a very wonderful, amazing program that I get to be a part of.